Hello, this is Ed Schwartz, majority shareholder, Ipswich Town Football Club, and this is my session at Leaders.
Welcome, Ed and Mark. Lovely to have you with us. I will also remind everybody you can put your questions in on the Leaders app. I know they are primed and ready for some good questions. We've had brilliant ones over the last day and a half, so do put them in, and I'll be monitoring them here on the iPad, so I'll try and get as many of them to Ed and Mark as we can. But lovely to have you with us. And Ed, I'll start with you first, because it's not been a bad investment, has it?
No, it's been a great investment, both financially, and we're having a lot of fun with it as well.
So you're kind of in charge of this investment firm, pensions. Where did this idea come from? In the US, pension fund, invest in a football team in England.
Yeah, so I'll be brief. One of our long-standing clients, Arizona Public Safety, which is the state of Arizona in the US, representing largely police and firefighters. The chief investment officer named Mark Steed calls me one day and says, I think we should invest in as we call it in the US, an English soccer team, but an English football team. And I kind of did a double take and said, I'm not sure that's a good idea, but after some convincing, I said, we'll look into it, and became very, very enthusiastic about it. But really, from the reason we became so excited about it really was because of our introduction to Mark Ashton. And when we look at making investments like this, we really invest in people more so than anything. And so meeting Mark and learning about his vision, we were really excited about the investment, and it certainly has paid off great for us.
And there's a real responsibility, isn't there, when it's a pension fund, that you do invest carefully. And a lot of people can look at the world of football and see, great reward, but also great risk.
It is, and what we've done in numerous asset classes is we always go with local people, experts, and we bring a certain level of review and discipline. But as long as we have the best local representation, good people, honorable people with a great culture, a great plan, we just back them and just kind of stand back and help them and be supportive and not get in their way.
Mark, Ed has been very complimentary of you already, and you have a great relationship backstage. You're joking, you're laughing, you clearly get along well. How important is that from your perspective to have that sort of dynamic and support when running a football club?
I think it's key. As Ed's just said, the football club is vitally important, but for me it's all about the people and the trust with the people. And from day one, when we talked about the plan to run the football club, we had a vision, and we set the rules almost that shareholders own the football club, but management ran the football club, and that line would never be crossed. Ed and the board challenge, sign off the budget, sign off the plan, but once that's agreed, they leave management to run the football club in its entirety. And I think that's been key for us, because football's one of the most challenging industries in the world, but the challenge is in front of you. What I don't want to do is spend every day looking over my shoulder, wondering what's going on. Are people meddling? Are people doing things they shouldn't? And I'm so privileged to have this board and ownership that actually just pump oxygen into us every single day, give us the resource and say, go and deliver the plan as quickly as you can.
So how does that relationship work then? How often are you talking? Is there big gaps in between it, or is it a day-to-day? I think people are always really interested in that dynamic.
Yeah, well, look, we have a formal board quarterly. But Ed and I speak probably 2, 3, 4 times a week, and we may speak daily, we may speak fortnightly. We speak more in the transfer window because that moves around quite quickly. But we also have quite a diverse board. We've got other US investors who own big US franchises in other sports, in hockey, and have owned basketball, etc. But we've also got solid UK knowledge. We've got myself, Luke Ware and Tom Ball. We've just brought former Ipswich captain and Ireland international Matty Holland onto the board to give us more football knowledge. So it's a robust, round board, but I go back to it, it's all about the people.
You mentioned some of the new investment that has come in with Brightpath, and just talk us through the reasons why you wanted to do that.
There are really a couple of reasons. The pension fund had made a significant investment in the club, and the thought is that in an ideal situation, we would bring in additional capital, but not just for money. Raising the money was the easy part. We really wanted to bring in strategic capital, largely from the US, in ways that we could help grow the brand, grow the business. And so I think we've been really successful. But at the same time, we didn't want to change all the good things that we had. We didn't want to change the control provisions or any of the interference that ownership would have with management. So we have some additional people on the board, but before we allowed them, we vetted them, we interviewed them, and we all really had to get on board that they understood what the plan was, what the vision, and they signed off on it, including a code of conduct before we would allow them to join. We think is a very successful and team that's running well.
What is it about football in the UK then that is attracting increased investment from the USA? We're seeing it at a range of clubs recently.
I think it's multifaceted. I think for one of the reasons is that the valuations are much lower than some of the US sports, the NFL, the NBA. And I think a lot of American investors think that there's a lot of upside, and I agree with them, there is. And I think there's also an element of, and this might be a controversial thing to say, but I think there's some American arrogance that comes in and says, we can do this better, we can commercialize this more effectively. And I think it's a dangerous view because I think that a lot of American owners don't understand the tradition, don't respect the sport, don't respect how things are being run. And I think there's a balance, and which is what we've tried to bring. So I think there's, and I think thirdly, it's pretty exciting. Anyone who's ever gone to a Premier League game, and I didn't have the fortune of growing up following the sport, but being introduced to it, I'm literally like a kid. It's just the most incredible thing, and the fans are better than any in the world, and so we've been having a lot of fun with it.
Just on that, I think this is really interesting. When we did the cap raise, one of the things that surprised me was when you're in US sport, they can financially plan their businesses more effectively than England because they don't have relegation. They know what division they're going to be in. And I thought the fact that we had promotion and relegation would be seen as a negative for investors. But the US investors love the jeopardy. I think the jeopardy piece, promotion, relegation, it drives our unique sport, the sport that I've been privileged to be in for over 30 years now, and is so unique. And when you go to a huge American football game where there's 60, 70, 80,000 people, I still don't think that generates the atmosphere that 30,000 at Portman Road does. 30,000 people screaming, passionate, ready to die for their club almost. It's very different, and I think that comes back to jeopardy.
And I suppose it's those cultural differences and how you use them as positives, and then how you maybe just kind of understand that there's some things that will just be different.
I think, we laugh about this. We've worked together now for 3 years, and it's the first time I'd worked with American investors or American owners, and I thought, well, we all speak the same language. We may speak the same language, but the words mean very different things, and we've had some real fun in board meetings when people have said things and not understood or got muddled on what we're actually trying to mean or what we're trying to say. But I go back to it, I think you can see our body language is happiness. I work with good people. I'm so privileged. This is platinum-plated money that's coming into our football club. It is pension fund money. So whether we're in COVID, whether we're in a recession, the money rolls. The pension fund have been outstanding. They do what they say they're going to do. ORG manage that money on behalf of the pension fund. I think it's very special, and I think it's been one of the reasons why you've seen Ipswich move forward so quickly.
And so, Ed, how do you manage or kind of define the success then of this investment? What are your targets?
I think that we define success in a number of different ways, but obviously managing money, financial success is very, very important. But also it's the quality of the people, the investment, the fact that this isn't just a financial investment, but the management is and this is all part of their philosophy and their plan. A lot of it has to do with community. And we've done a lot in the Ipswich community. There was even a big news piece in the US about how much the football club has meant to the local community. And when Mark talks about investment with the club, any new investor, they have to sign off on the fact that we're part of the community. And it is, and that's part of the beauty of the investment too, because it's not just a football club, it's not just an investment, it literally is a community asset. And we're caretakers of that, and we take that very seriously. It's not just lip service. I've seen it with my own eyes. I see how management embraces the community and how the community is embraced this club. And it's something that I'm probably more proud of than even the investment success.
So Mark, how has the success then translated onto the pitch with this remarkable run of back-to-back promotions into the Premier League now?
When we started this plan, I have a very clear model of operation how I like to run the football clubs. And the challenge is we can build the best community foundation, the best commercial revenues, the best facilities, the best training grounds, the best academies, but if we're not successful on the pitch, ultimately it falls apart. My model is based around a very different type of first-team manager. In my history, if you look at my managerial appointments, A.D. Boothroyd at Watford, replaced by a young coach out of Chelsea called Brendan Rodgers. At the same time, we had Malky Mackay and co in the coaching setup. Michael Appleton, Lee Johnson at Bristol City, Kieran McKenna at Ipswich, first-time managers. And Sean Dyche at Watford as well. So that's my model. But those managers then have the infrastructure built behind them to make sure they have the opportunity to be the very best version of themselves. And again, as the board pump oxygen into me, it gives me the ability to pump oxygen into young first-time managers to create the environment that they need to be successful. And that brings challenges because, when we bring a Kieran McKenna into Ipswich, this is a big club. 2 former England managers, it's won European honours, we've got the 30,000 capacity, 30,000 fans in League One. Can a young manager handle that pressure? So we have to bring everyone together, whether that's the fans, the local media, whether that's the podcasters, whether that's the former Players Association, to understand the plan, to understand what Kieran was going to do day one, because it was going to be different. But what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to encourage my manager to be the best he can be. And I think what you've seen is a club come together, a town come together, a county come together to support a young manager with an absolute identity on the pitch. So everyone moves together as one. And what you've seen is us build an absolute rocket ship that's ploughed through 2 divisions and is now competing in the biggest league in the world.
So how has settling into the Premier League been then?
Challenge. Look, it's been brutal, and it's the most amazing league in the world, but it's the most challenging league in the world. We got promoted. That was great. And within 2 weeks, some of the biggest clubs in the world want to take our young manager from us. So that's difficult.
How did you handle that then?
I think I'd like to say with integrity and with the values that Ed's just talked about. I spent a lot of time with Kieran, not really trying to persuade him to stay, but just talking through Ipswich, about us, what we can achieve, what are the pros and cons of other clubs, where they are, what the risks are, what the analysis is, what we can do. And all I can do is give him the facts, and he's a young, intelligent man that then has to make his own decision. And he absorbed all that knowledge, took a little bit of time and came back and said, no, this is home, this is where I want to be, we're not finished, let's get on with it. And then we move into the madness of the transfer window.
And there were a lot of transfers, and that's one of the things, isn't it, when you're a club that is promoted to the Premier League, how you deal with that first season and what you do with the squad, because there's 2 conflicting things that maybe you need to bring in a whole host of new talented players, but then do you upset the dynamic of the team that got you promoted?
It's a great point, and we built a club on culture. We built the team. The plan was to build a team in League One that had the ability to take us all the way through, and that's what we did. But when we get to the Premier League, we realised we are going to need different types of players. We ended up signing 12 players in the summer, but one of the things we've talked about is the blend of each position, each player, We do a lot of background checks on the players. Can they fit our culture? Will they support community? Can they work the way McKenna wants to play? Kieran has an ethos of we're in. We don't have days off. That's not usual at a lot of clubs. So there's a lot of dynamics to take on board, but we felt it was the right thing to do to bring in that number of players. The challenge that we have, it's a football club that hasn't been in the Premier League for 20 years. Stadium's behind the times. We're promoted with 2 clubs who are on parachute payments. So straight away, even the 2 clubs that we're promoted, their revenues are 30 million per year more than us. So their financial fair play position is substantially in front of us. So we are really behind stadium development, player development, academy development. And that's because the growth curve of the club has been a rocket ship in the last 18 months. It's a challenge.
And what then do you want to achieve this year in the Premier League? Does it matter if you go back down to the Championship?
Yeah, it does. We want to win for sure. And, we want to be the best version of ourselves that can thrive in this division. Now, to do that, we're going to have to beat the odds. But we had to beat the odds in the Championship because we had budgets that were 4 times less, the likes of Leicester, Leeds, Southampton, because, again, they're parachute clubs. It's okay. There's a different way you can do this. And we've recruited primarily young, hungry English talent who've come through the academy systems. Liam Delap, we've got Leif Davis, Greaves. There's a group of Amari Hutchinson from Chelsea who've come through the academy system that are players that McKenna can develop and take on, but can also compete in the Premier League now. And what we've seen, the Premier League's tough, but I genuinely believe we'll be competitive.
And Ed, from your perspective, from an investment point of view, what do you want to achieve from this season?
Yeah, things happened a lot better and faster than we projected. We really didn't have in our models this type of success this quickly. So what we really want to see from the season is we did everything we could to put ourselves in the best position to compete and win as many games as possible. And whatever the result is, we're prepared to do to accept it and deal with it. But we think that the way management's approach this is that we're doing everything we can to compete. We think we will. We think we will stay up, but our model is built in a way that it's a long-term, sustainable model. And if it doesn't go as we plan, we feel really good about it long-term anyways.
Interested as well, Ed, to get your perspective. I know Mark has mentioned there things like parachute payments and FFP and all the kind of financial rules and regulations around football here in the UK and wider across Europe. From an American perspective, when you come into an ecosystem like this, what's your view on it all?
For us, it's all new, and we've had to learn everything. But the most important thing is that we have the best management to be able to guide us along the way as we look and evaluate different things. And while we have a consistent plan and an approach, we have to change things a little bit. For example, we didn't expect necessarily, the ideal situation isn't to bring in 12 new players in one season, but because we got promoted so quickly, we really needed to do that. And so our plan is consistent, it's stable, but it also has to, when it needs to be somewhat flexible. So that's really our approach, and working very, very closely with what we think is the best management in the business. Yeah.
We've had a question in here kind of on those parachute payments. You've mentioned them, Mark. How do you view them?
It's interesting. I'm a capitalist at heart, so I don't mind them because I see the challenges on relegation. I see you need to be able to smooth the line between the Premier League and the Championship. I think I sat on the EFL board for 3 years. The EFL board will know my position on this. I want clubs to grow. I like to see investment come in. I think we need to review the whole financial fair play rules and regulations. I think they're outdated. These rules in the Football League were set over 10 years ago, and inflation and costs have changed. They need to be reviewed. But they need to be reviewed in line with the Premier League. Everything has to be, for me, simultaneously, because clubs are going to move between the leagues. But we have I think the best industry in the world. The Premier League is the biggest global football brand in the world. I think the EFL and the Championship is not far behind it. The attendances, the passion, the excitement of the Championship is incredible. And I think you've got a group of people who run the EFL, who run the Premier League, who are perfectly placed to take both leagues further forward.
Do you have any idea of what changes you might like to bring in or implement? Is there anything day-to-day that kind of pops up that you're like, oh, actually, maybe this might work?
I think we're all... You can see even the Premier League club's spending and ability to sign players this summer was curtailed by financial fair play and the headroom. I think that's the piece for me that needs to be reviewed. It needs to be in line, obviously, with UEFA and rules for UEFA competitions. But it has to be, again, it has to be a flow between the Championship and the Premier League. And for me, we need to look at the overall deal on where the Premier League work with the EFL. There's been a lot of talk around is there a new financial deal between the Premier League and the EFL? I'm personally in favour of that. Whatever that ends up looking like, I don't know. But I think I go back to it. We've got good knowledgeable people who run both leagues, run the most exciting leagues in the world. And I think, with the type of investment I've seen available from the US, we're in such a good position to take our industry further forward. I really do.
A question coming in here about the long-term investment, Ed. What does that look like for Ipswich?
We always look at these as long-term investments. And there's certainly no plans to do anything different. We did bring in additional investment to be able to carry this forward. At some point in the future, there may be a recapitalization, but our intention is to keep everything the same management, same ownership, same board, that we can just carry this forward.
And when you're looking at investment areas within football, do you look at infrastructure teams? How do you break it all down?
In terms of
the investment plan, like when you first came into Ipswich Town and you looked at it as a football club and where you saw you could improve it, how does that work?
When we came into the football club, it really was stripped really to the bones, and we felt that it needed a lot of investment, both in people and infrastructure, the stadium, the training ground. And as we were learning the industry, we were learning how much we needed to do to compete. And one of the things that I'm really proud about is when Mark and his team came in, they said, okay, we're going to approach things as if we're a Premier League club in League One, and built that culture from day one as a Premier League club. So when we moved up faster than we thought, while all the physical infrastructure may not have been ready, a lot of the people and the approach and the mindset was already there. And that really has been helpful for us. So again, I can't tell you that we had anticipated from day one all the improvements we'd make to the stadium because of the Premier League requirements or the new training ground we're going to build, but it all kind of came about as we became more and more successful quicker than we thought. But that's all good.
Yeah. A question in here for you, Mark. How do you think about succession, talent acquisition and mentorship for the business side of the club?
Culture is key. And my staff will tell you, I don't run the business. I manage the people that run the business. And what Ed has just said is from day one in League One, our plan was to put Premier League people in, and we took staff from Premier League clubs into League One, which was a challenge to convince people to come. I mean, let's look. We took McKenna from Manchester United. One day, respectfully, he is on the bench coaching against Real Madrid, Barcelona in Europe. To the following week, we're away at Morecambe. That's true. That's facts. So it was a bit of. I remember it was a bit of a culture shock for him. But people are key. So off the pitch for a second, the team that sits behind the team all understand their roles and responsibilities, all understand how their ultimate role links to performance. I'll give you an example. We talk about this all the time. If I can't trust my staff to pick the litter up or say good morning to the man at the gate, I can't trust my multi-million-pound centre forward to do his job in the first minute of the game. Everyone has to understand their role in the organisation and how that leads to winning a game of football. it's key. The culture piece is absolutely key. I manage, if you like, the overall culture and the culture off the pitch. Kieran manages it with the players and his coaching staff. You can't get oxygen between Kieran and myself. We are so tight. The board, our superpower is not the money, it's not the club, it's the people. The way Ed and the investors behave, not to meddle. They are the only board in the country that have signed agreements, legal agreements, that they will conduct themselves in a certain way. They don't have the manager's number. They don't go to the training ground. They're not in the changing rooms. That's the manager's office. We give our manager the opportunity, again, to be the best version of himself. So our people, our culture, our processes are key. So when we lose and we get beat 4-1 away at West Ham the last couple of weeks and we're all disappointed, nothing changes. We go back to the process. The process stays the same and we go again. And I think that has been our ultimate superpower. And
I saw you, Ed, nodding along to that in terms of how that dynamic works between you all and signing up to those agreements and understanding your part within the football club. It seems like that was quite an easy thing for you.
It is, and again, making sure that you check your ego at the door. You know, we have a role and a responsibility. This is not a toy. Yes, it's fun, and oh yeah, it would be great to go to the dressing room and talk to the players and the manager, and it is interesting, and as a fan, that's great. But we know that as owners, we have a responsibility to make this thing work as best it can be, and that's not the right role for us. So we know our place, we are respectful of everyone's job. And by the way, Mark does the same thing. Mark doesn't go to the training ground, which is the manager's domain, without a courtesy phone call. He's not just going to pop in and disrupt his day either. So it emanates, from Mark's philosophy and culture, but he lives by that as well. And everyone has their roles and responsibilities, and believe me, they're held accountable. But it works really well, and it starts also with us. We don't want to do that because it's just going to be disruptive.
So I know you're at the game this weekend,
yes.
At home to Everton. What do you get from a match day experience there then?
So, for me, going to the match day, what I try to do, and maybe Mark will say I'm not always so successful, but we really don't want to get in the way. We want to go, we want to be supportive. We want them to know that if we do lose 4-1, okay, that's just another day. We get back on it tomorrow. If we win 4-1, that's great. But we go, we enjoy it. I love to learn. And the experience is second to none. So it is a fun thing to go to the games for us. Probably less fun for Mark, but for us it is a lot of fun.
And how does the interaction work there? You mentioned, it doesn't matter if you lose 4-1. You're not going to be those type of owners in that way. But how do the chats go?
We have like a little code word if it's a bad day. And look, you always have bad days. It's not always going to go well. I believe my role is to make sure that Mark feels he has the support. Sometimes that's hard from over the pond, so I send him a little code word. You don't want to talk after a 4. I get that, and a couple days later we'll chat about it. But it's something that I think is really important that we, as owners, need to provide to Mark and his team. You have our support. We know there's bad days. This is a very difficult business. It's emotional, but we have your back.
You going to win?
The match days are the worst day of the week for me, I must admit. People, even when we win, people say, "Have you enjoyed that?" And I say, "No, I'm relieved." But Ed and is the rest of the board, again, on the match day, are really good at helping me manage anxiety, keeping me occupied on other things. And again, I just go back to, I'm just privileged to have owners that, as Ed's just said, have my back, take care of me, pump oxygen into me and say, get on with it.
I feel we have to mention the other Ed that is involved in Ipswich Town. I'm getting a couple of questions in here. One is just Ed Sheeran, ! It's not even a question. So I'm just going to put it out there because he's a big part of the club.
Local man, cares passionately about his football club, sponsors the shirt. Has been on the shirt for a number of years, wanted to do it for a year in the Premier League. He'll come off it next year. Has now taken a percentage shareholding in the football club. And he's a man that passionately cares about the football club and the local community. He's fantastic. There's nothing we ask of him that he won't do. He'll be at the game. There'll be plenty of the games this season when he's not touring. He messages, he sees Kieran and the players. What an ambassador for the football club.
I know we're into the red, but I just would like to know that we've heard a lot of people talking about Gen Z and influencers and reaching out to new audiences. But when you have somebody like Ed Sheeran who does that, what has that brought actually in terms of the reach of Ipswich Town globally?
It's just incredible. So he gets involved in designing some of the kits, personalises them a little bit. But when we launch a kit and he is live on stage in Vegas, it reaches audiences that, you can imagine our social media, we have a marketing reach all of a sudden that Chelsea, Manchester United, the biggest clubs in the world, would love to have, because he is a world superstar. But he cares about his football club. So yeah, he reaches all those audiences, and you know, when he's texting backwards and forwards, you know, my kids think it's hilarious. My children can't quite believe it. But he's such a supporter of the football club, and as I said, he sponsored the club when nobody else really wanted to. Got us to the Premier League, came to the Premier League with us, and said, "Look, I'll do a year in the Premier League with you. Then I'm going to step off and go for a global reach." But again, we go back to the pension fund money. One of the things you won't see on our shirt is a gaming sponsor.
Okay.
It's not, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but for us, it's not the direction of travel we want to go. It's not something that Ed would want to see. We're a community-based football club, and we will look for sponsors in a different type of direction.
Okay, interesting stuff. We could talk for so much longer, but I'm afraid we have busted our time. Really appreciate your time with us, Ed and Mark. Thank you all very much for listening. I'm sure that they will be around as well for more conversations. Well done.